Just 3 months ago, I uploaded a video with this here for a title. Internal bullying and sexism, players retiring right before a World Cup, a near strike during the Six Nations due to contract issues, Wayne Pivac getting sacked. And now, today, despite a very high like ratio on that video about Welsh rugby being a disgrace, Wales have done the unthinkable. They have topped Pool C of the 2023 Rugby World Cup. They may not be the most complete team in the tournament, but this Welsh side is the one that has overcome more adversity out of any in the last 4 years. And with the adversity only now just starting for Australia, times are dark. For today's video is very obviously going to be about Wales defeating the Wallabies in Pool C of the Rugby World Cup. My name's Max, I'm the host over here at the Black Jersey. I want to say a huge big thank you to my patrons for today's video. It was a very one-sided match, unfortunately. Warren Gatland has made something out of nothing, and Eddie Jones just wasn't simply able to repeat the same trick with the Wallabies. It was very, very tough for them, getting absolutely pasted in this match. We've got a lot to look in for today's analysis, so just a reminder as well before we start the video, do check out my past videos for the World Cup out on Rumble and Odyssey, just because of a few copyright strike issues. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts at the end of this video. Now guys, without wasting any more time, let's get into this. Although the copyright issues mean I can't show you guys the footage, Gareth Davies scores the opening try, and it comes from a very similar setup to the opening try against Fiji, which was also off a line-out. Now that I've labelled each player in the still, I'll slide the graphic over so we can compare the shape with the shape against Fiji. As we can see on both occasions, Davies is in his default position from 9 during the line-out before we roll out the hands down the line blue axis to show the default rugby tactic of running the ball off 10. Against Fiji, Wales are much more flat, while against Australia they have the liberty of attacking from deeper as they know they don't need their midfield to physically confront an intimidating defence line. What we do need to notice though is that Jack Morgan is the inside man on Nick Tompkins' shoulder for both plays. As we now cut back to zoom in on the formation against Australia on 2:14 on the clock, we can see that Australia definitely haven't helped themselves either. Wales have all 7 of their backs in frame, though we've zoomed too far in to see Reece Zammit on the wing. The white arrows show us though that Australia on the other hand have Donaldson marking 2 players at once, Karevi marking Tompkins, Pattaya marking North, then Coro Betty has to mark both Williams and Reece Zammit. All of this commotion is because Rob Valetini, who will now add a spotlight to, hasn't got the pace to slot into the channel on the red cross. Attempting to use Valetini to defend the 10 channel now leaves the overlap out wide because the rest of the team can't adjust their lines to look like this animation. Josh Adams, who will spotlight as well, is now in a realistic position to switcheroo over to the space between North and Williams, forcing Coro Betty to mark 3 different attackers. Well, the animation we can now see on screen is the usual reason for a back standing behind a diamond-shaped formation, usually of forwards. Wales have learned from the All Blacks a lot. Morgan, as he's a forward, can realistically bind to Tompkins and clean a ruck, which creates the hesitation of Australia to shift on defence because of the hole that it could open. We now transition to 2:15 on the clock to see Donaldson's need to mark bigger backfire, having been forced to hesitate to shift. This gap here is now open for Morgan to run through. As we skip ahead again to 2:18, Morgan clearly isn't quick enough to get the try himself, but we now turn our attention to Gareth Davies on the inside, who is about to score unmarked to begin the game. A lot of complex elements in that try for us to go over, I know that guys, so we're now going to discuss the halftime stats of this game. Something I normally do on this channel is we go through the halftime stats and we see why each team is in the position they're in at halftime. Obviously Australia very clearly having the majority of possession and a slight majority of territory, and so they are therefore dominating the attack stats. That's how the Wheelers should be, but Wales on the other hand, they are ahead on the scoreboard. The breakdown with 2 turnovers on compared to 1, well, that's definitely a comparison we can start off with. Wales, despite not really getting the ball as much, are definitely doing more effective things with the ball. Tackle success for both teams, really good. Ruck success for both teams, really good. But the issue is at the breakdown, Australia weren't exactly the most disciplined when it came to defending it. They were very, very good at retaining the ball, just keeping a flow, playing several passages of play in succession, but when we arrive at the line-out, both teams did miss one, and well, taking the opportunities of the set piece is always going to hurt you. As we can see, Australia giving away 3 penalties inside their own half. Wales are ahead on the scoreboard thanks to attempting all 3 of the ones that are on offer. The kick success ratio that you saw before, the only one missed was a penalty goal, and all of the ones on offer were attempted. It's huge, it makes a big difference, and we can really see that Wales are deservingly in the lead because of that. It's all well and good to want to score tries, as we know Wales have scored one, but it's also about extending that lead further. The Wallabies simply pushing the penalties over to keep ahead. The Wales team, though, they're also slotting the penalties themselves, because they're trying to keep the lead rather than allow Australia to catch up. It's one thing to have a lead, it's another thing to maintain it. Anyway, now that the ad break's done, strap yourselves in to see things get worse for the Wallabies. On 47-33, Wales have been working pretty hard to try and get into the 22. As they finally do so, we can see 12 Wallabies in frame, with the other 3 at the bottom of this ruck on the red cross. Over on the open side, we can clearly see a 6-on-6 match between the defenders and attackers. Callaway is over there. He's looking to follow this animation so he can mark Reece Zammit on the wing. By trying to compensate for Wales having the overlap though, Callaway has left a gaping hole in the backfield. We'll rewind the animation to show Callaway on the freeze frame again, to show that he's come into this position from the red cross. In this freeze frame, Anscombe is in possession of the ball, with Wales having a laughably bad attacking pattern of a basic hands down the line, but by shifting out from the red cross to mark Reece Zammit on a bad attack pattern, Callaway has suddenly turned this into a kicking opportunity. Anscombe doesn't even need to communicate with the other players outside him, and we can now see the new still of Tompkins clearly grounding the ball. Not only are Wales able to rub some real salt in the wound with Anscombe's drop goal, but they also do manage to get a maul try at the end of the game to seal the deal of this result. As we can see, Wales put 9 players into the line out, meaning there's a chance for D to follow this animation and force Faisler into a 2-on-1. With 4 possible jumpers that we can now clearly outline as well, a team behind on the scoreboard just won't have the mental sharpness to figure out what's happening here on 77-32. We now skip ahead to 77-34 to see that though Basham is a full 8 centimeters shorter than me, he's still able to get a decent lift, with Beard celebrating his 50th test for Wales, because Basham, normally at the back of the lineout due to his lack of height, takes the ball. Frost is yet to bind when Basham lands a few frames later. Not only is this here the case, but 4 Wallabies now need to follow the animation and wrap around into the maul in order to propel Wales, who have already got Domachowski and Jenkins looking to bind on. A few frames later, we can now see Philip, Fa'amalseli and Shoop having to enter on an angle. As anyone who studied science knows, the Welsh now have a huge advantage with vertical kinetic energy propelling them straight, while the Aussies don't have their spines in alignment. Their kinetic energy is horizontal and lacks the same level of force. Jack Morgan, the face of Wales's revival, confirms the final try and will now examine the full-time stats. Australia looked absolutely leaderless when James Slipper came off the pitch. They really did, and we can see it in all of the stats. Wales finished the game off with 51% possession despite having a very, very dodgy share of it in the first half. Of course, territory as well was always going to go in their favour, although we can't actually see them necessarily catch up with the Wallabies on metres run, on defenders beaten, or anything else. They play with such heart, such passion for their team, and you just cannot deny that. They were absolutely brutal at the breakdown, just trying to slow as much ball as possible. Though we can only see 4 turnovers, 1 compared to 3, it's always good to just slow that ball down and make sure the meters that the opposition are running, though it's more than you, aren't exactly counting for as much. It's all well and good to dominate the stats, but it's another thing to actually translate those stats into points on the board. Wales definitely did not have the best day on defence compared to the Wallabies, but you know, it was better and it was still enough to shut things down. I noticed a few speed bumps as well in defence. Those are always very good to use. And the ruck success, yeah, I know that both teams are doing really well when they were in possession of the ball themselves, but the just general nature of Australia, just this obsession, this rugby ball fever, to just try and steal the ball at every phase. Even though they started 2 blindside flankers in the starting lineup to try and counter this, it just still wouldn't go away. Australia did end up losing 2 crucial lineouts at the end of the game as well. That really didn't help their cause at all. And though they managed to get all their scrums 100% on their own feed, this does not tell the story of all the penalties that Wales won off their own feed, Wales with 100% as well. A lot of these penalties as well, we really need to examine the context of these, because Wales, as we can see, Australia conceded 12 penalties in total, Wales conceded 9 there, but Wales attempted to kick 7 out of the 8 penalties that Aussie gave away inside their own half. The Australians, on the other hand, they attempted to kick just 2 out of the 6 penalties that Wales gave away. By just trying to go for the line out at every single phase, Australia really did just shoot themselves in the foot. They couldn't quite exactly make the touchline with their kicking game. Their kicking game wasn't very good, but no matter how hard a lot of people in the comments are going to try and blame Eddie Jones for this, I think the problems are a lot more deep-rooted than this. To share my final thoughts of the match, I think Rugby Australia, like I said, they've got a lot of problems, but these problems are becoming endemic to their team. All this ill discipline that myself and other creators have talked about for a long time now, it has transcended 3 head coaches. Michael Checker's Wallabies were a bit of a thuggish team, as were Dave Rennie's side, probably even more so, and though Eddie Jones is really trying to iron it out, trying to get a better disciplined team, when Super Rugby doesn't enforce the same laws as World Rugby, it's just going to be so much harder, and Eddie Jones just hasn't been able to do that, because Super Rugby is where the instincts of the players get formed. The 20-minute red card, the fact that the 9s aren't allowed to tackle the other 9, pressure them during a scrum, the fact that, there's the golden point, it takes away the pressure of actually closing out a game. It takes away the pressure of actually having to keep your discipline. All these, these Northern Hemisphere nations, they've never had to deal with the differing laws between Test Rugby and Super Rugby. They have it the same throughout the whole year. It's consistent, and the Wallabies haven't been able to find that consistency. Rugby Australia, they can sack Eddie Jones for all I care. I think that, after this point, you probably can't defend him, but whoever they do try to replace him with, stop going for the short-term fever dream. Stop just trying to get the best sugar rush possible. By thinking short-term, going for deals such as Joseph Suaalii, you're only shooting yourself further in the foot and sending rugby in Australia further into the grave. Wales are genuinely turning around from an absolute horror show of the last 4 years. Wales went into the World Cup 10th in the world, and so if Rugby Australia pay some attention to the way that Wales, got their players out of going on a strike, maybe there could be hope for them, but they really need to do some soul searching, stop looking for short-term answers, because though England should not have sacked Eddie Jones, Australia should not have hired him either. I'm not trying to say Dave Rennie's the best coach of all time or anything like that, as some people on Reddit will eventually say, but you have to think far more thoughtfully about business decisions than just trying to get the short-term sugar rush. Rugby on Australia, if they can't win the 2025 Lions Tour, if they can't win the 2027 Rugby World Cup, I think we're all going to be looking back on 2023 as the day that rugby in Australia was lost forever. This over here, just to show how deep this goes in Rugby Australia, this is a message that all the Wallaroos sent to Rugby Australia about receiving worse treatments than the partners of the Wallabies, for example, ahead of this World Cup. Not exactly ideal. Wales, on the other hand, as I said in the start of the video, they are not the most complete team, but they play with passion, they play with heart, and they play for a coach that they are willing to die and go to war for. That's all I'll do for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Max. As I said at the start, I'm the host of this channel, The Black Jersey. Make sure you sign up to Patreon and support me on Instagram with Threads if you enjoyed this. My past videos for the World Cup, they're on Rumble and, of course, on Odyssey as well. Thank you so much, guys. Like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and I will see you later. Cheers from Max.